Lena Dunham. 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 I like saying Lena Dunham more than Lena Dunham. Was in the news the other day. Because she recently just got hired for the next season of American Horror Story. Now, I really enjoyed American Horror Story through season 1 through 3. After that, I think it's become a cesspool of shit. But I want to talk about this because I find this disturbing, I find this wrong, and I think it's fucked. I think it's fucked that American Horror Story would hire somebody with a past like this, specifically in regards to the controversy that surrounds them, which I'm going to get into in a second here. But first, we need to establish what was written in her book. I have read her book more than once. There's a lot of weird shit in there, but there's some also stuff in there that I find to be molestation, to be sexual abuse. Here we are at healthychildren.org, and it talks about sexual behaviors in young children, what's normal, what is not. It's pretty interesting. This is fairly accurate in a lot of descriptions on what pediatricians say is normal for kids, because there are kids who do sexual things. There's a lot of sexual exploration within kids with kids. It's just a very common thing. And there's a chart sheet here which talks about normal common behaviors, less common behaviors, uncommon behaviors, and rarely normal. And then it goes on to explain some red flag behaviors, such as occurs frequently and cannot be redirected, causes emotional or physical pain or injury to themselves or others, is associated with a physical aggression, involves coercion or force, or stimulates adult sexual acts. Now, the reason that I mention this is because I want to establish is that, yes, children are adventurous. They explore themselves and touch themselves, and they play games where sometimes they take their clothes off, and I get that. And it's backed up by science that kids do this shit. So inherently, I don't find an issue with children being sexual with one another, but there is a problem when there's a significant age difference that doesn't fall into the category in which this entails. So in Lena Dunham's book, she describes sexually abusing her sister, and I'm calling this sexual abuse, although her sister has come out and said that she wasn't traumatized by this, which is good. That's good that her sister was not. But I would say the vast majority of people, at least people who have come to me that have been sexually abused at 2-3 years old by their brother who's 10 or 12 or 13, that it affects them and it's caused them a lot of emotional and physical trauma. And here's the thing, I do believe children can abuse other people. I do believe that there are behaviors in children that can show a red flag that goes into their later teenage years, which in Lena Dunham's case has happened, and it has been described, is described in her book. And that's what's so fucked up about it. Like in her book, she writes this: "As she grew, I took to bribing her for her time and affection, $1 in quarters if I could do her makeup like a motorcycle chick, 3 pieces of candy if I could kiss her on the lips for 5 seconds. Whatever she wanted to watch on TV, she would just relax on me. Basically, anything a sexual predator might woo a small suburban girl, I was trying. What I really wanted beyond affection was to feel that she needed me, that she was helpless without her big sister leading her through the world. I took perverse pleasure in delivering bad news to her, the death of our grandfather, a fire across the street, hoping that her fear would drive me into my arms and would make her trust me." Now you see, if this was a one-time occurrence, then yeah, okay, 1 or twice, I can get that. But she was 7 years old and her sister was 1. We're talking about a baby that probably maybe just started learning to walk, if not is still crawling, and she fingers her 1-year-old baby sister. Like if her sister was 3, 4, 5, I can see that being more plausible. But we're talking about a 1-year-old baby, which doesn't even fall into the age gap that the sexual age of behavior of children even falls into according to science. And the problem is that this continued later on in life. It didn't stop. And that's the biggest problem that I have with this, is that this was a persistent and consistent behavior up until she was even in her early teens. Trying to make someone feel 100% dependent on somebody else in order to get through the day, or is a manipulative control tactic. Again, I can understand if this happened more than just once or twice, but again, that's not the case here. Delivering bad news to make someone try to get closer to you, in order to make them trust you, in order to bribe them and coerce them into doing things that get you sexual pleasure from, that they may at 1 year old not even they can't even comprehend that age, pretty much. That is fucked up, and that is abuse. I believe children can abuse other children. And I believe their behaviors can transcend into later in life. And I want to clarify, I'm really glad that her sister was not traumatized by this, but I've had people message me and email me about their sexual abuse where it has traumatized them, and that's why I consider this a form of sexual abuse. Whether or not the victim acknowledges it as sexual abuse, to try to get someone completely dependent upon you is abuse. It's hands down abuse, especially in regards to trying to get sexual favors. This continued on for an additional 10 years, even though they had separate bedrooms. Lena goes on to describe how turned on and horny she would get when her little sister would like be close to her body, and she would masturbate right next to her when she was asleep. This was in her teenage years, okay? And she says this in her book. So I want to ask you a question. If you have a brother, let's say he's, 13 years old, and he has let's say there's a 10-year gap, so he has a 2 or 3 year old little sister, and he goes into the bedroom and fingers her every once in a while because he's really, curious about everything, but it continues on. Is that not abuse? You can't defend the curious factor when it continues on later in life. And that's the problem, is like, I understand children are curious, and I give leniency for the first few times. But after that, no, it's not curiosity anymore. I believe it can turn into abuse. And that's why even on this site it describes red flag behaviors, because children can be abusive. And what's worse is I'm not even done yet. So that's just a small fraction of what Lena Dunham has done, admitted to doing. But what about that time Lena falsely accused a man of raping her, and when that controversy hit, rather than respond to criticism appropriately and apologize for, labeling a man, slandering a man for an accusation that can only damage someone's career for the rest of their lives, she goes on to describe anybody who criticized her for that as a white conservative Republican, and of course misogynists. But I want to ask you guys another question. So there are going to be some people saying, well, guess what? Her sister wasn't traumatized by it, so therefore it can't be abuse. Her own sister defended her, so why are you even talking about this, Daniel? Remember the Duggar family when they were all in the media, and the sister of the Duggar family defended the sexual abuse of them? Yeah, the women defended their sexual abuser. This is a common thing that can happen with people who are sexual abusers. It's not uncommon to be so delusioned by or traumatized by sexual abuse that your abuser actually tries to convince you that what was done to you was either your fault or that it was perfectly okay. And that's what's so disturbing about this, is if her sister is being true and that didn't affect her in any way, that's really awesome. I'm happy. But you also have to understand that where I'm coming from in thinking and talking about this is that sexual abusers do actually convince their victims to defend them, that it wasn't actually as bad as they thought. And that's what disturbs me so much about this, and that's what makes this really a complicated issue. And I'm curious to know what your guys' thoughts are on this whole ordeal. Obviously, I think her being hired for American Horror Story was a horrible idea. The show is horrible now. Having her on it is just actually, I refuse, and I mean this. I'm not just saying this because I'm upset or anything. I'm saying this because I'm not going to watch the next season of American Horror Story, even if it's good, because I don't want to see this abuser, which I believe is a predator, on the screen. I just don't. I don't want to support anyone who's that scummy of a person by giving them my viewership. But that's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. What do you guys think about this? Do you agree? Do you disagree? But before we end here, I want to make a statement about my new rates. So it all turned into a running joke, right? But it's actually serious now, because I've had people actually make orders, and I've given some clients some pictures, some videos. Yeah, I'm selling foot stuff. Like, if you really like feet, if you have a foot fetish, and I'm not kidding, I'm not being sarcastic here. This all started off as a joke, but now that people are actually wanting it and they've paid me, let me know. Send me an email. I have a nice camera. I can take nice photos of my feet, specifically just for you. And I don't give a shit if you fap off to my feet. I really don't. YouTube doesn't pay me literally nothing. Patreon is all I have for an income right now. Did a few job applications recently because I'm trying to find other ways to make money. And honestly, if you like feet and you want to see some sexy feet, contact me. You gotta do what you gotta do to make some money. And no, I will not do nudes, but I will give you some sexy foot photos if that's your thing and that's your fetish. I hold no judgment to anybody who contacts me over it. So let me know and contact me in my email below. Thank you for watching.